Hi, everyone. It was so great to see familiar faces when I walked in, because I have to say I was a little intimidated coming here today, but seeing so many regular customers' faces and knowing how much APS has been an incredible friend to Fork over the past 26 years, I just feel so honored to be with you today and to answer any questions you have about the dining scene. But I'm going to be interviewed by Dr. Freedman for a few minutes, and but I sincerely appreciate the 26 years of support that you have all given us. Many great APS meals where the whole room is surrounded by academics and people who I greatly respect and feel, very proud to be serving. So some great luminaries, great friends have come through, and I truly, again, like I said, greatly appreciate all of you. So thank you. Am I coming down there?
Thank you so much.
Am I coming down here?
Why don't you? Yeah,
Okay.
Sure.
Well, I didn't know if you were coming up here.
Well, there's a hierarchical. I'm a medieval historian by my day job, so of course hierarchical symbolism is very important. But we're so grateful to you for this magnificent restaurant, which has influenced certainly more than just the APS. But I'm going to ask a couple of questions on my own, and then we have a little time for questions from the audience. My first question really is, apart from maybe sort of demographics of your diners, how do you know that it is a group of APS people? Do they order differently? I mean, are they more abstemious or more generous, or less meat eating, more meat eating, or
there are definitely a lot of questions, but typically the sign is that our very friendly Annie Westcott usually precedes them.
Okay. So you kind of know. There's no surprises.
No surprises.
So clearly one of the questions I think on all of our minds is what has changed from before the pandemic, and I would begin by saying some things that were predicted to change haven't changed. So it was thought, restaurants will never be the same. Or half the restaurants that existed in 2019 won't be there in 2023. What would you say is shaking down to be the medium to long-term change?
Well, I think it's very interesting because most of us think about restaurants primarily about celebrating special occasions, the food that we eat, but we don't think about the construct of what goes behind the restaurant. And I think that that's the number one thing that changed during the pandemic, is that suddenly, after years of having chef-driven restaurants, and by chef-driven, that means, everything is driven by the ingredients, by the technique, and by how great you can, make a dish, perhaps. But I think that the number one thing that has changed is that you also have to have a restaurant that is run with integrity, with your team in mind, because when the pandemic happened and everybody was unfortunately closed down and many of our team members lost their jobs, I think that we lost many people in the industry, and to be able to attract people to come back to an industry where people were feeling afraid because they were frontline workers and they didn't necessarily want to be close to people, or that they knew that restaurants didn't necessarily have the benefits that other industries had, or that they maybe didn't have the culture that they wanted. So all these things have become vital to a restaurant beyond just the food.
Trends in dining, they keep on multiplying, or things go out and come in. Could you identify some trends that you either are able to resist, won't accept, or would like to resist?
Well, for 22 years, my chefs said, no takeout. So now A Kitchen has takeout, Fork has takeout, High Street had a whole business of takeout. So takeout is one of those things that everybody has come to accept after the pandemic because that was the only thing that was available. So that's one trend. Another trend that I would say is that I think because so many people took up cooking as a hobby during the pandemic, that they have a greater appreciation for comfort foods like bread. It's so hard to make a loaf of bread. Even though some people may have perfected their bread at home, I think they really appreciate when there's a great loaf of bread. And other comfort foods and simple foods like that are becoming much more popular within restaurants. So
and that's okay with you?
I love bread. We made a whole restaurant around bread.
Interestingly enough, this is when I ask students, particularly from foreign countries, what it is they miss from home. Usually it's not some exotic and difficult to replicate dish, but it's something very basic. And certainly for people from Europe, the number one thing is bread.
I just want to add one other trend that I think is really important is the importance of the variety of cuisine. So you see the number one restaurant in our colleague Nook Santoron won Best Chef Mid-Atlantic for her Thai cuisine. And I think there were 18 Asian chefs or restaurateurs who won James Beard Awards this year. Just the number of different ethnic restaurants that are authentic and creating a story for themselves, I think is a really important trend right now in food.
Thank you very much. Do we have time for some questions from the audience? Okay,
yes.
Sure, sir.
My wife Cindy and I had dinner at your restaurant Fork on Wednesday, and it was wonderful, so thank you for that. We eat out quite a lot, and we've reached the point where the first thing we ask about a restaurant is not how good is the food, how good is the service, what is the ambience like. We ask how noisy is it. I actually have on my cell phone a special app called Soundprint that measures noise levels and gives reports on noise levels. Yours was, by the way, moderate, which was pleasing.
That's a shock because I think that it's really noisy in Fork.
Well, compared with
one of the top priorities is to provide soundproofing because that is an increasing, I think, criteria, not by any demographic at all, but I think people want to connect with each other right now. They haven't been with people, and I think that being able to have a conversation and be with your community and friends and family is really important. We always had sound panels, so that makes it moderate because the ceilings, as you know, are so high. But we have to add more because we redecorated the restaurant in some aspects, and it just suddenly got a little bit louder. And also, people are so excited to be with each other. I think that adds to it too.
Many of you will remember Danny Meyer's response to this question 7 or 8 years ago, which was partly the way you don't have carpets and tablecloths at many restaurants anymore. But also he said a lot of, and this is perhaps more typical of pre-pandemic, restaurants aren't designed with you in mind. And that younger people feel that if it's not noisy, there's no buzz, and if there's no buzz, it's not sufficiently
Well, I think
successful.
soundproofing doesn't necessarily make a restaurant less busy or not. It just reduces the din. So I think that's what helps a lot.
I think we probably agree. Yes.
Hi. From your perspective, what about the goods and the bads, the advantages and disadvantages of tipping?
That's a great question because that is definitely a trend that I think has to be addressed. Legislation has changed for many states where many states are eliminating the tipped wage, which for those of you who don't know, tip wage is a lower than minimum wage that you're allowed to pay because your team members receive tips, and so long as they receive more tips than the legal minimum wage, that makes sense. However, because the minimum wage and living wage has been increasing in many, many states to $15 to $20, 18 probably, $15 to $18 per hour over the next few years, it is going to make less sense to have tipped employees and more sense to pay your team members a living wage. And also from a ability to draw people in, our team members they don't see $3 an hour as the minimum wage. They see themselves as being almost paid less than what they're worth because they think that wage is what they're being paid. So I think that the perception of tipping is changing. Just so you all know, if you come to Fork, we do have a 20% mandatory service charge. That's treated differently than a gratuity in many senses by the IRS. And so we do that because we want to show our team members that they're valued, and then that money is only used for our front of house servers. At High Street, we have a mandatory 20% service charge, and all our employees make a wage between $18 and $30 an hour. So we're trying something different. So just so you know, and then it's on us to make sure that we're delivering 20% level service. And our team works really hard to, as you all know, we work really hard to make our customer service exceptional. So.
Any other questions?
Ellen, do you want to say a word? It's me, Annie, in the middle. Do you want to say just a word or two about the beautiful new restaurant that you opened at 9th and Chestnut? Because I got a private tour about a month ago, and it's really stunning and worth the walk 7 blocks. It's just amazing.
So for those of you who didn't know, High Street on Market, our beloved restaurant next door to Fork, unfortunately, due to a landlord issue, we relocated it to 9th and Chestnut in the Franklin building, which is a beautiful 1920s Trumbauer building. We're at the corner, so bright, sunny, soundproofed space. Although the front section is a little bit noisy because that was the only part where we couldn't add the sound panels to the ceiling. But we have a private dining room, and what High Street has been known for is locale. That's why we called it High Street on Market, because of the location being on Market. High Street, as you probably all know, was Market Street, Market Street was High Street in colonial times. And when we created High Street, it was all about our bread program, grains, locale, making sure that we source from great farmers, fishermen, cheesemongers, and people like that in the area. And that's what we're continuing to do at the new location. We only have, for you Francophiles out there, which I know that there are many, we only have American wine. So, but I think that American wine is one of the most exciting trends that is happening right now, and it reflects the same diversity and drive to innovate as there has been in American culture in general.
Won't you all join me in thanking Ellen Yin for being with us?
Thank you. See you tonight.